Twin Beggar sisters find a baby wrapped in an old cloth beside the trash, and when they notice her bracelet, one of them exclaims, "She's wearing the same one we have." This detail changes their lives forever. It was a golden fall afternoon when Jenna and Hallie were on their way back from school. The two twin sisters walked side by side, as they always did, sharing secrets and giggles along the way. They lived in a small apartment in the older part of the city, where the streets were narrow and the buildings pressed up against each other. "Should we go through the alley today?" Jenna suggested, adjusting her colorful backpack on her shoulders. Hallie nodded. The alley was a shortcut home. "Only if we go quickly," Hallie replied, glancing around as though someone might see them. They were identical, like two drops of water, both with brown hair and curious eyes. Jenna was the chattier, bolder one. Hallie was calmer, more observant. Together they complemented each other. They ran into the alley, hopping over puddles from the morning rain. The ground was damp, and the grey walls of the buildings looked even darker. There were a few trash cans around, as well as a stack of old boxes piled in one corner. Suddenly, Hallie stopped. "Did you hear that?" she asked, grabbing her sister's arm. "Hear what?" "Listen!" They went quiet, holding their breath. Then they heard it, a tiny, weak cry coming from somewhere near the trash cans. "Maybe it's a kitten," Jenna whispered, already moving closer to look. Hallie followed, stepping carefully. The sound got louder as they approached some black garbage bags piled against the wall. "It's coming from here," Jenna said, pointing, and crouched near the bags. Gently, she nudged one of the plastic bags aside and jumped back, almost stumbling into Hallie. "Oh my gosh!" she gasped, eyes wide. There, wrapped in a thin, tattered cloth, was a baby girl. A tiny infant with a face red from crying, eyes squeezed shut, and fists clenched tight. "It's a baby!" Hallie exclaimed, crouching beside her sister. "Someone left a baby in the trash." They froze for a moment, not knowing what to do. They had never seen anything like this before. Who would abandon such a small child? "We have to pick her up," Jenna said, taking charge first. "It's cold here." Carefully, Jenna reached out and lifted the baby. She was lighter than expected and was shivering from the cold. "Hold my backpack," she told Hallie, who immediately took her sister's bag. Jenna adjusted the baby in her arms, trying to wrap her more securely in the dirty, damp cloth. "She's freezing," Jenna said, worried. "We need to get her home right now." Hallie glanced around, nervous. "Shouldn't we call someone?" "The police or—" "And leave her out here in the cold while we wait?" Jenna interrupted. "We'll go home." But they both knew they were alone. There was no one else to help them. They hurried out of the alley, Jenna cradling the baby with great care while Hallie carried both backpacks. The baby was still crying, though more softly now, as if too tired to wail any louder. "Do you think she's hungry?" Hallie asked as they walked. "Probably, and cold too." When they arrived at the small building where they lived, they climbed the stairs slowly to avoid jostling the baby. In front of the apartment door, Hallie pulled the key from her pocket and unlocked it. The apartment was modest but clean and organized. It had a tiny living area that opened into the kitchen, one bathroom, and a single bedroom the girls shared. "Let's put her on our bed," Hallie suggested, running ahead to make a spot. Jenna followed her to the bedroom and gently laid the baby down. For the first time, they got a good look at her. She was a little girl with a tuft of dark hair and round cheeks, though she looked thin. "She needs a bath," Hallie said, noticing the dirt on the baby's face and hands. "And clean clothes, and food," Jenna added. "But what do babies eat?" They exchanged glances, realizing they knew almost nothing about caring for a baby. "We have milk in the fridge," Hallie suggested. "I think babies drink milk. I'll warm some up. Will you stay with her?" Hallie agreed and sat on the edge of the bed, watching as the baby, who had stopped crying, looked around with drowsy eyes. "Hi there," she whispered, extending a finger toward the tiny hand. "You don't need to cry anymore. You're safe now." To her surprise, the baby grabbed her finger tightly. That was when Hallie noticed something glinting on the baby's wrist, a delicate little bracelet with colorful beads and a crescent moon charm. Hallie froze. She raised her own wrist and looked at the bracelet she'd worn for as long as she could remember. It was identical to the baby's wires, with the same beads and the same charm. "Jenna," she called, her heart pounding. "Come look at this." Jenna returned from the stove, holding a mug of warmed milk. "What is it?" "Look at her wrist." Jenna came closer, her eyes going wide at the sight of the bracelet. "It's the same as ours." Without another word, Jenna raised her own wrist, showing the identical bracelet she had worn since childhood. They looked at each other, then at the baby, trying to understand what it all meant. "This can't be a coincidence," Hallie murmured. "Our bracelets are special." "You think—" Jenna didn't finish her sentence, but Hallie knew what she was asking. "I don't know, but something's definitely strange here." The baby started whimpering again, probably hungry. Jenna tested the warm milk on her own wrist before figuring out how to feed it to the baby. "We need a bottle," she said. "I'll try giving it to her with a spoon for now." While Jenna tried to feed the baby small spoonfuls of milk, Hallie decided to bathe the little one. She filled the bathroom sink with warm water, and together, the sisters washed the baby with gentle soap. The baby seemed to enjoy the water, giving a toothless smile that melted their hearts. "We need clothes for her," Hallie said as she dried the baby with a soft towel. "We could use that old t-shirt that shrank in the washer." They improvised diapers with small towels and dressed the baby in the t-shirt, which was still huge on her, but at least it was clean and warm. "So now what?" Hallie asked, sitting on the bed with the baby in her arms. "What do we do?" Jenna bit her lip, thinking, "I'm not sure. What can we do? It's just us for now." "Do you think they'll take her away?" Hallie asked, her chest tightening at the thought. "I don't know." "Probably." They fell silent, watching the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully, with a full tummy and a clean body. "Where did you come from, little one?" Jenna whispered, stroking the baby's fine hair. "And why do you have the same bracelet we do?" As the afternoon wore on, the sisters took turns caring for the baby. When she cried, they tried to figure out what was wrong: hunger, a wet diaper, or just needing to be held. They learned quickly, improvising with what they had. The sun was setting by the time the baby fell into a deep sleep in the middle of the bed, surrounded by pillows so she wouldn't roll off. "We need to buy supplies for her," Jenna said, sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook. "Real diapers, special baby formula. But we don't have much money," Hallie worried. "Only what we saved for emergencies." "Isn't this an emergency?" Jenna pointed out, referring to the bedroom where the baby slept. "We can't take care of her properly without the right stuff," Hallie nodded. "We'll go to the drugstore tomorrow morning. They should know what a baby needs." Jenna wrote a list in the notebook: diapers, infant formula, a baby bottle, clothes. Then she added a big question mark at the end of the page. "I've been thinking," she began, hesitantly. "What if we try to find out where these bracelets came from, ours and hers?" "How?" Hallie asked. "We've always had ours." "Yeah, but somebody must have given them to us, right? Maybe if we find out who gave us our bracelets, we can figure out who this baby is." Hallie frowned thoughtfully. "But there's no one to ask. We've been alone for so long." Jenna looked at her sister, then at the bedroom door where the baby slept. "We're not alone anymore," she said softly. "Now there are 3 of us." Hallie smiled, a warm feeling in her chest. "3 of us," she repeated, liking the sound of it. "We need to give her a name. We can't just keep calling her the baby." "How about Sadie?" Jenna suggested. "I read that name in a book once. I thought it was pretty." "Sadie," Hallie echoed, testing the sound. "I like it. Hello, Sadie." They went to the bedroom and watched the sleeping baby. Next to her, they placed the list of items they needed to buy. "We'll head out early tomorrow," Jenna said. "Buy what we can, then try to find out more about these bracelets." "Do you think we'll find any answers?" Hallie asked, glancing at her own bracelet. "I hope so. There must be a reason Sadie came to us, wearing a bracelet just like ours." That night, neither girl slept much. They took turns caring for Sadie, who woke up now and then, crying for food or just fussing. In the middle of the night, sitting on the bed with the baby between them, the twins silently made a pact. They would protect Sadie at all costs and solve the mystery behind the 3 identical bracelets. Outside, the city slept beneath a starry sky, unaware of the tiny miracle that had occurred in that alley and the journey that was just beginning for the 3 girls, joined by identical bracelets and a fate that, though still unknown, had already found them. A week had passed since Jenna and Hallie found Sadie. Life, which was never easy, had become even harder. The little money they had saved ran out in 3 days. Diapers were too expensive, and so was infant formula. "We're down to our last 2 bottles, Jenna said that morning, shaking the nearly empty can of formula. Hallie was rocking Sadie in her arms, trying to calm her. The baby was crying in hunger and nothing seemed to help. "Could we give her regular milk diluted with water?" Hallie asked, desperate to make Sadie stop crying. "The lady at the drugstore said it's not good for such a tiny baby. It can hurt her stomach." The apartment felt colder than usual. It was fall, and nights were getting chillier. They only had a small electric heater, but they avoided turning it on to save on the electricity bill they couldn't afford. "We need more blankets," Hallie said, noticing Sadie shivering in her arms. "She gets so cold at night." Jenna looked out the window. Outside, dark clouds hinted at more rain. On the street below, people hurried past in coats, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the small apartment. "We can't keep going like this," Jenna said, turning to her sister. "We need to find out more about Sadie, about whoever left her in that alley." "How?" Hallie asked, finally calming the baby, who was now sucking on her own finger. "We'll ask around." "Someone must have seen something." Hallie glanced out the window, then at Sadie in her arms. "What if we don't find anyone? What if we can't get more food for her?" "We can't think like that," Jenna answered, though her eyes betrayed the same fear. "We have to try." That afternoon, after improvising yet another diaper out of an old sheet and giving Sadie the last bottle they had, the twins prepared to go out. They bundled the baby in layers of cloth for warmth and tucked her close against Jenna's chest, inside her jacket, which was the bigger of the 2. "Ready?" Jenna asked, feeling Sadie's slight weight against her. Hallie nodded, though her eyes showed worry. "Where do we start?" "Back to the alley where we found her. Then we'll ask at the nearby shops. Maybe someone saw something." They left the apartment and walked down the stairs carefully. The day was grey and damp, with a thin mist hovering over the streets. People walked by in a hurry, bundled in coats, not paying attention to 2 young girls. The alley looked even gloomier than the day they had found Sadie. The trash cans were still there, overflowing with black bags, and the smell of rot and dampness hung in the air. "It was right here," Hallie said, pointing to the exact spot where they had discovered the baby. Jenna approached, still holding Sadie within her jacket. There was nothing new, no clue or sign of who might have abandoned the baby, just the same grimy, forgotten alley. "Let's check the shops," she decided, turning her back on the alley. Their first stop was a small corner grocery store. The middle-aged owner, looking tired, shook his head when the girls asked if he'd seen any woman carrying a baby around the alley the week before. "I see a lot of people coming and going every day," he answered, eyeing them suspiciously. "I don't pay attention to who passes by." "It's important," Jenna insisted. "Someone abandoned a baby in the alley." The man shrugged, going back to organizing cans on a shelf. "I'm sorry, I didn't see anything." They tried 3 more shops with no success. No one seemed to remember anything helpful. Most people barely glanced at them as they answered, too busy with their own lives to care about 2 girls asking strange questions. "This isn't working," Hallie said after their 4th attempt. "No one saw anything." Sadie began to cry inside Jenna's jacket, probably hungry again. They looked for a quieter spot to check if she needed a diaper change. "Over here," Jenna said, tugging her sister toward a small park that was almost empty because of the bad weather. They sat on a damp bench and took Sadie out of the jacket. The baby's face was red and her eyes swollen from crying. "She needs food," Hallie whispered, glancing around as if expecting someone to magically appear with a full bottle. "We're out of everything," Jenna said, sounding desperate. "We'll have to go back home and figure something out." At that moment, an elderly lady approached. She had white hair pinned in a tight bun and wore a worn wool coat. She carried a shopping bag and looked curiously at the baby. "What a lovely baby," she commented, stopping near the bench. "How many months old is she?" The girls exchanged uncertain looks. They had no idea of Sadie's exact age. "We're not really sure," Jenna answered honestly. "We found her." The lady's eyes widened. "Found her? What do you mean?" Jenna hesitated, but something in the lady's kind expression encouraged her to continue. "In the alley, near the trash cans. Someone left her there." The woman raised a hand to her mouth in shock. "Oh dear heavens, when did this happen?" "About a week ago," Hallie replied. "We're trying to find out who might have left her there. Did you see anything?" The older woman frowned in thought. "I live in the building on the corner, close to that alley. I see a lot from my window." She paused, concentrating. "Wait, I think I did see something." Jenna and Hallie sat up straight on the bench, suddenly attentive. "What? What did you see?" Jenna asked, holding Sadie closer. "I remember a young woman, not much older than you two. She was crying a lot, looked desperate." "When was this?" Hallie asked, leaning forward. "Maybe 8 days ago. Late afternoon, almost dark. She was carrying a bundle in her arms. I could hear a faint crying." "What did she look like?" Jenna asked, her heart racing. The lady placed her shopping bag on the ground and sat down next to them on the bench. The cold wind rustled the trees around them, leaves swirling on the ground. She was thin, had dark hair, looked very scared, checking around as if afraid someone would see her. The woman glanced at Sadie. "Was the baby wrapped in a cloth like this?" She pointed to the cloth the girls had kept, the same one Sadie was wrapped in when they found her. Jenna pulled it out of her jacket and showed it. "This one right here." The lady took the cloth gently, examining it. It was faded and stained in places, though it might have once been pretty. "Yes, that's the same one. I remember the little design in the corner. There was a small, faded crescent moon design embroidered on one corner of the cloth, very similar to the charms on the bracelets." "Did you see where she went after that?" Hallie asked, leaning in. "No, she went into the alley and stayed there for a while. When she came out, she wasn't carrying anything anymore." The lady looked at Sadie with sadness. "Poor thing. It must have been so hard for the mother to leave her." "How could anyone do that?" Jenna asked, indignation in her voice. "Abandon a baby in the trash." The lady sighed, returning the cloth. "Sometimes people do desperate things when they're scared or feel they have no options. She looked so young, so lost." "Was she alone?" Hallie asked. "Yes, completely alone." The lady paused, but there was something odd. Before she entered the alley, she looked at a bracelet on her wrist. She stared at it for a while, as if saying goodbye. Jenna and Hallie exchanged a meaningful glance. "A bracelet?" Jenna asked, her heart beating faster. "What did it look like?" The woman furrowed her brow. "I couldn't see well from my window, but it glinted in the light." Hallie raised her arm, showing her bracelet. "Did it look like this?" The older woman adjusted her glasses and examined Hallie's bracelet. It could have been. There was something round dangling, like that charm. The girls looked at each other again. The mystery was growing deeper. "Do you remember anything else about her?" Jenna asked. "Any small detail helps?" The elderly lady pondered for a moment. She was muttering something while she cried. "I couldn't make out everything, but I did hear 'forgive me' and I have no choice." "Did she look sick or hurt?" Hallie asked. "No, just very sad and frightened, like someone who's running away." Sadie began to cry again, louder this time. The woman looked at the baby, concerned. "She seems hungry. Do you have anything to feed her?" The twins lowered their eyes, embarrassed. "No," Jenna admitted. "We're out of formula and we have no money to buy more." The lady looked at them for a long moment, taking in the situation. "You're on your own, aren't you? Taking care of this baby by yourselves?" Hallie nodded, unable to hide her exhaustion and worry. "We're trying our best." The lady picked up her shopping bag and stood. "Come with me, I live nearby, I have some milk, and I can make something warm for you to eat as well." The girls hesitated, Jenna more so than Hallie. "Don't worry," the lady said, noticing their distrust. "I'm just an old woman living alone. My name is Clara. I won't hurt you." Sadie's cries were getting louder, and the sky was threatening rain at any moment. They had few options. "Okay," Jenna agreed finally. "Thank you." Clara smiled and started walking, the twins right behind her. The three of them walked for several blocks past old buildings and shops with fogged-up windows. The cold wind stung their faces, and Jenna kept Sadie well shielded in her jacket. Clara's apartment was on the second floor of a well-kept older building. It was small and simple, but tidy and cozy. A sleepy orange cat greeted them at the door, stretching lazily before curling back up on its cushion. "That's Marmalade," Clara said. "He doesn't mind visitors." The girls stepped inside shyly, still holding Sadie, who continued to cry. "Sit down," Clara said, pointing to an old but comfortable sofa. "I'll fix something for the baby." While Clara busied herself in the kitchen, Jenna and Hallie took in their surroundings, noticing the photos on the walls and little trinkets on the shelves. There was a warmth here they hadn't felt in a long time. "Here you go," Clara said, returning with a makeshift bottle. "It's not infant formula, just warm milk with a bit of water and sugar. It should help ease her hunger for now." Jenna took the bottle and offered it to Sadie, who began sucking immediately, finally calming down. "Thank you," Jenna said, relief flooding her as the baby quieted. "While she's eating, I'll make something for you two as well," Clara continued, heading back to the kitchen. "It seems like you haven't been eating well these days." It was true. Ever since Sadie arrived, the girls had spent almost all their money on things for the baby, leaving little for themselves. Clara returned a few minutes later with 2 bowls of hot soup and some bread. "Eat," she said kindly, "then we can talk more about this young woman you're looking for." The sisters ate in silence, savoring every spoonful of the soup that warmed their chilled bodies. Clara's apartment was simple, but to them it felt like a palace right then. There were paintings on the walls, colorful pillows on the sofa, and the scent of homemade food lingered in the air. Sadie, now fed, was sleeping peacefully in Hallie's arms. "You really have no one to help you?" Clara asked after they finished. "No," Jenna replied. "It's just us, and now Sadie." "Sadie," Clara repeated, looking at the sleeping baby. "What a lovely name." "We chose it," Hallie said with a small, proud smile. Clara studied them for a moment, as though making a decision. "I'm not sure exactly what's going on, Drake, but I can see you need help." She paused. "I have a spare room here. It used to be my son's, but he moved away years ago. You can stay if you'd like." The twins exchanged glances, both surprised and wary. "Why?" Jenna asked. "Why would you help us?" Clara smiled gently. "Because everyone needs help sometimes, and because I live here alone, with plenty of space and time on my hands." She glanced at Sadie. "Besides, I know a bit about caring for babies. I had my son, and later worked as a nanny for many years." The girls considered her offer. The apartment was warm, there was food, and Clara truly seemed willing to help. "Could we just stay for today?" Hallie asked, glancing at her sister. "It's getting colder outside and Sadie needs rest." Jenna nodded slowly. "All right, just for today." "Thank you, Miss Clara." "Just Clara is fine," the older woman replied with a smile. "Now tell me more about those bracelets. They seem important." The girls showed their bracelets and Sadie's as well. They explained how they'd always worn theirs, for as long as they could remember, and how surprising it was to find the baby with the exact same one. "Hey, strange, isn't it?" Clara commented, examining the tiny moon charms. "They look like they have a special meaning." "We want to find Sadie's mother," Jenna said, "to understand why she left the baby and why Sadie has a bracelet like ours." Clara looked out the window where the rain had started to fall. "If this young woman was so desperate she abandoned her child, there's likely a complicated story behind it. Maybe she's in danger." "Do you think we can find her?" Hallie asked hopefully. "Who knows?" Clara replied. "It's a big city, but sometimes fate has a curious way of bringing people together." She looked at the 3 identical bracelets, especially when there are connections like these. That night, Clara made up the spare room for the girls, setting up a makeshift bed for Sadie with soft cushions and blankets. Exhausted, the twins lay down, feeling a sense of safety they hadn't felt in a long time. "Do you think we'll find her mother?" Hallie whispered in the darkness. "I'm not sure," Jenna answered. "But at least now we have a lead. We know she's out there, that she was sad and probably didn't want to abandon Sadie, and that she has a bracelet like ours," Hallie added. "That has to mean something." For a moment, they lay in silence, listening to the rain against the window and Sadie's gentle breathing nearby. "You know what I think," Jenna finally said. "I think it wasn't an accident that we found Sadie. I think it was meant to be." Hallie smiled in the dark. "Like we're a family." "Yes, like a family. The three of us." While the girls drifted off, Clara sat by the window, gazing at the rain. She had witnessed many things in her long life, both sad and joyful. But there was something special about these girls and the baby they'd found, something that spoke of destiny and bonds that transcend blood ties. Outside, the city carried on beneath the rain, hiding secrets and stories in dark alleys and bright windows. Somewhere out there, perhaps, a young mother was thinking about the daughter she had been forced to abandon, looking at a bracelet identical to the one she left with the baby, a bracelet with a crescent moon charm, just like the ones worn by two twin sisters since they were very small. And so, as the night wore on, the four souls in that little apartment rested, unaware that their stories were only just beginning to intertwine, united by three identical bracelets and by a destiny that had brought them together against all odds. 3 days had passed since Jenna and Hallie met Clara. The elderly woman had been a true angel, offering them not just a roof and food, but also advice on better caring for Sadie. Clara taught them how to prepare a special kind of milk Sadie could tolerate, how to recognize the different types of cries, and even how to make better diapers using soft fabric from an old trunk. "You remind me so much of the girls I looked after years ago," Clara said that morning, helping Hallie change Sadie. "You've taken care of other children?" Jenna asked, setting the small table for breakfast. "Yes, many," Clara answered with a nostalgic smile. "I was a nanny all my life. Some kids stayed with me for years. They were almost like my own." The sisters glanced at each other. It seemed a good time to share more of their own story. "We also had someone like that," Hallie began, securing Sadie's makeshift diaper. "An older lady who looked after us." Clara watched them, interested but not pressing. She waited quietly for them to continue. "Her name was Edith," Jenna said, taking a seat. "She lived in the same building we did. When she found us, we were alone and hungry. She took us in and cared for us." "For a long time?" Clara asked gently. "Years," Hallie replied. "She was like a grandmother to us." Jenna lowered her eyes, her voice becoming quieter. "But a year ago, she passed away. She got sick and didn't make it. And since then, it's been just the two of us," Hallie added. "We managed to stay in her apartment for a while, but the money ran out." Clara nodded, understanding their situation without needing more details. "And now there are 3 of you," she said, looking at Sadie, who was happily grabbing her own feet. The girl smiled, though the memory of Edith still stung. "Yes, now we're 3, Jenna affirmed, "but we still want to find Sadie's mum, not to give her back," she quickly clarified, "just to understand." Clara thought for a moment as she poured tea into small cups. If she was indeed running away, as it seemed, maybe she's trying to get far from here. She paused. "Have you checked the train station?" The twins looked at each other. They hadn't considered that. "That's a good idea," Jenna said, brightening. "We could go today." "But how will we recognize her?" Hallie asked. "We only know she's young with dark hair. That could describe hundreds of people." "Take Sadie with you," Clara suggested, "and keep an eye out for bracelets. If she's wearing the same one, you'll spot it." After breakfast, the girls got ready to leave. Clara helped bundle Sadie in a soft, clean blanket, much better than the rags they'd used before. "Be careful," Clara advised, handing them a small bundle. "Here's a snack in case you get hungry, and some milk for Sadie." "Thank you for everything, Clara," Jenna said, giving her a grateful hug. Hallie did the same, finding the same comfort in Clara's arms that Edith once provided. "We'll be back before dark," she promised. The train station was several blocks away. It was an old building with a high roof and huge windows that let in the daylight. Inside, it was always bustling, people arriving, departing, or simply waiting. The twins entered cautiously, Jenna carrying Sadie. The place was huge and crowded. How would they find a single person here? "Let's sit and watch," Hallie suggested, pointing to an empty bench near the main platform. For almost 2 hours, they sat there, scanning every passing face, looking for a young woman with dark hair and maybe a moon charm bracelet. Sadie slept in Jenna's arms, oblivious to the important search going on. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack, Jenna sighed, exhausted. Maybe she's not even in town anymore. Let's give it another half hour, Hallie pleaded. Then we can go back to Clara's. At that moment, Sadie woke up and began to cry. Jenna tried to soothe her, rocking her gently, but the baby seemed fussier. I think she's hungry, she said, rummaging in the bag for the milk Clara had prepared. While Jenna fed Sadie, Hallie kept watch on the travelers. Then she noticed a woman sitting alone on a bench across the station, her back turned. The woman had dark hair and a slumped posture, which caught Hallie's eye. Jenna, she whispered, nudging her sister. Look over there. Jenna followed her gaze, spotting the woman. You think it might be her? I'm not sure, but something's telling me it is. Let's get closer. Holding Sadie in her arms, Jenna followed Hallie across the station. They approached cautiously. Now they could see she was young, maybe in her 20s, and she looked sad. She had deep circles under her eyes and wore worn-out, simple clothes. Her hands clutched a small travel bag, and on her right wrist. The bracelet, Hallie whispered, squeezing Jenna's arm. She has the bracelet. Indeed, the woman's right wrist bore a bracelet identical to theirs, complete with the same moon charm. They stopped a few steps away, unsure what to do. That was when Sadie let out a happy squeal, the kind babies make when they're content. The woman lifted her head, looking in their direction. The sadness in her eyes was replaced by shock. She stared at Sadie, then at the girls, and then at the bracelets on their wrists. All color seemed to drain from her face. It can't be, she murmured so quietly they barely heard. Jenna stepped forward, holding Sadie a bit higher. Do you know this baby? She asked plainly. The woman didn't answer. Her eyes were glued to Sadie, filling with tears. You're her mother, aren't you? Jenna insisted. Slowly, the woman nodded. Her hands trembled so much she had to fold them in her lap. How did you find her? She asked, her voice shaking. In the alley by the trash cans, Hallie said, about a week ago. The woman covered her face with her hands and began to cry silently. People nearby cast curious glances, but no one intervened. Why did you abandon her? Jenna asked, trying not to sound accusing but unable to hide all her anger. The woman lowered her hands, revealing tear-streaked cheeks and red eyes. I had no choice, she whispered. I was desperate. I had nowhere to go, no way to care for her. Hallie noted something familiar about her face, the shape of her eyes, her nose. What's your name? She asked. Leanne, the woman replied, wiping her tears with her sleeve. Leanne Morris. The name meant nothing to the sisters, but something about this felt bigger, a powerful sense that this meeting mattered more than they realized. Do you want to hold her? Jenna offered after a pause. Leanne hesitated, then extended trembling arms. Jenna carefully placed Sadie in her mother's hold, watching Leanne's reaction closely. As soon as she felt the weight of her daughter, Leanne broke into fresh sobs. She held Sadie gently, as though afraid she might break. I never thought I'd see her again, she managed between sobs. I thought I'd lost her forever. We've taken good care of her, Hallie said, sitting beside Leanne. We bathed her, fed her, made improvised clothes. Thank you, Leanne said, looking at the girls with genuine gratitude. I can't thank you enough. The station buzzed around them, but they felt enclosed in a bubble, isolated from the rest of the world. Why did you leave her? Jenna pressed, taking a seat on Leanne's other side. Leanne took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. It's a long, sad story, she began. I got pregnant very young. I was just a teenager when I had my first daughters, twin girls. She looked up at Jenna and Hallie. I wasn't financially or emotionally able to raise two babies, and it haunted me for years. The sisters exchanged confused looks. What does that have to do with Sadie? Hallie asked. Leanne stared at the bracelets on their wrists, then at her own, which matched. These bracelets, she murmured, as if confirming something to herself. I gave one to each of my daughters before I had to give them away, so if we ever met again, We'd know each other. Her words struck the girls like a bolt of lightning. Silence fell between them, heavy and charged. "You're saying that?" Jenna began but couldn't finish. "Yes," Leanne confirmed, looking at them with a mix of pain and hope. "You are my daughters, the twins I gave up so many years ago." Tears streamed down Leanne's face as she gazed at them, searching for traces of herself. "We didn't know," Hallie whispered, too shocked to speak louder. "No one ever told us." "Were you raised by someone else?" Leanne asked anxiously. "An older woman named Edith," Jenna replied, still processing the revelation. "She took care of us until about a year ago, when she passed away. And since then, it's been just us," Hallie added, "until we found Sadie." "Our sister," Jenna murmured, looking at the baby in Leanne's arms. "Our sister." Leanne couldn't contain her sobs. "I never imagined. I never thought you would find each other. It's like fate." She couldn't finish, overwhelmed by emotion. "But why abandon Sadie then?" Jenna asked, circling back to the original question. "If you already regretted leaving us?" Leanne drew in another shaky breath, composing herself. "Last year I got involved with a man. Powerful, influential. I didn't know he was married." She cast her eyes down in shame. "When I found out I was pregnant, I told him I thought we'd be together, that he'd help, but he was furious." Her hands trembled as she stroked Sadie's fine hair. "His associate contacted me, offered money to disappear. When I refused, he threatened me. Said he'd ruin my life, that I'd never find work, and that he'd do everything possible to take my baby once she was born." Announcements echoed over the station's loudspeakers, but for the four of them, the world had gone still. "I ran to another city, tried to start over, but he found me again, kept threatening me." Leanne looked at Sadie, eyes full of pain. "When she was born, I thought I could hide us both, but he found out. Sent messages saying he knew about the baby and would come for us." "So you abandoned her," Hallie concluded, grasping the situation. "I was desperate." Leanne wept openly now. "I thought that if she wasn't with me, he'd leave her alone. I put the bracelet on her wrist, like I did with you two, hoping that one day..." She couldn't go on. "And then?" Jenna asked gently. "Then I went to a shelter. I hid there for days. Today, I came to the station to leave for good. Start over somewhere else, as far away from him." "What about Sadie?" Hallie demanded. "Were you just going to leave her behind?" Leanne shook her head, hugging the baby closer. "I thought she'd be better off without me, that someone would find her and care for her better than I could." She lifted her eyes, looking at them both. "Like what happened with you?" The twins said nothing, struggling to absorb it all. It was too much at once, finding their birth mother, learning Sadie was their sister, and hearing about the fear and desperation that led Leanne to abandon not one, but 3 daughters over time. "What are you going to do now?" Jenna finally asked. Leanne looked at the train just pulling into the platform. "I don't know. I came here planning to run, but now..." She looked at her 3 daughters, reunited after so long. "I can't leave you again, not after all this." "We could go with you," Hallie blurted out. "Start over together, somewhere else." Leanne gazed at them hopefully. "Would you do that?" "After everything I've done," Jenna and Hallie exchanged one of those silent twin conversations. "We're a family now," Jenna said. "All 4 of us. We need to stay together." Leanne smiled through her tears, a genuine smile for the first time since they'd seen her. "You're right, we are a family." She held out her bracelet. "These bracelets bound us together, even when I thought we were forever apart." Jenna glanced at the station clock. "We have to get back to Clara's before dark. We promised, and we need to pick up our things." "Who's Clara?" Leanne asked. "A lady who helped us," Hallie explained. "She gave us a place to stay and food. She showed us how to take better care of Sadie." Leanne nodded, understanding. "Let's go see her then. I want to thank her for taking care of my girls." The 4 of them rose, Leanne still cradling Sadie. Before leaving the station, she cast one last look at the trains. She had come here prepared to run away and start a new life alone. Now she was leaving with 3 daughters and a new beginning she never imagined. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky with pink and orange hues. The streets were calmer, with fewer people rushing about. The autumn wind blew cold, but they scarcely felt it now. "Where will we go after we visit Clara?" Hallie asked as they walked. Leanne looked at her daughters, then up at the vibrant sky. "I'm not sure yet, but we'll go together. That's what matters." The four of them continued down the street, united not only by blood and identical bracelets, but by a destiny that, against all odds, had brought a shattered family together. A family that, despite everything, had found its way back. Clara's small home had become a temporary refuge for the newly reunited family. After the emotional reunion at the station, Leanne, Jenna, Hallie, and little Sadie returned to tell Clara everything. She listened with tears in her eyes and offered her home for as long as they needed. "It's not big, but we can make room," she said, smiling at the four of them. 3 days had passed since then. Leanne spent most of her time holding Sadie, as though trying to make up for the lost days. Sometimes, the twins caught her gazing out the window with a worried expression. That rainy afternoon, while Clara took her usual nap and Sadie was also sleeping, the twins found Leanne at the kitchen table, scribbling notes on a piece of paper. "What are you doing?" Jenna asked, sitting across from her. Leanne jumped slightly, not having noticed them enter. "I'm planning our departure," she said, folding the paper nervously. "We need to leave soon. We can't take advantage of Clara's kindness forever." Hallie joined them, looking directly at her mother. "Where will we go?" "I'm not sure yet. Maybe a small town far from here, so nobody can find us." The twins exchanged worried glances. Jenna spoke first. "Are you really going to keep running?" Leanne lowered her eyes. "I have no choice. He's too powerful. If he finds us..." "What if we don't run?" Hallie suggested, surprising both Leanne and Jenna. "What do you mean?" Leanne asked, confused. "What if we stand up to him?" Hallie continued. "If he's Sadie's father, he has responsibilities." Leanne shook her head adamantly. "You don't understand. He doesn't want anything to do with Sadie. He wants us to disappear. He has the money and influence to ruin us." Jenna leaned forward on the table, closer to her mother. "But he also has the money to help," she said firmly, "to give Sadie what we never had." Conflict was written all over Leanne's face, fear and guilt tangling in her eyes. "He'll never accept." "Have you tried?" Hallie asked gently. "Or did you just listen to his associate?" Leanne went quiet for a moment, thinking, "No. So I've never spoken to him directly after I found out I was pregnant. It was always his associate contacting me." "Then maybe he doesn't even know what really happened," Jenna concluded. "He might not even know you were pregnant." "Or maybe he does know, but his associate never told him the whole truth," Hallie added. "Either way," Jenna pressed, "running isn't a solution. We've lived like that, hiding, scared. It's not living." Leanne looked at her daughters with admiration. Though they were still children, they spoke with a wisdom born of a hard life. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "Not for myself, but for you. I don't want you to get hurt." Hallie took her mother's hand in hers. "We're together now. We've already faced difficult things, and we can face this too," Jenna agreed, "as a family." Tears sprang to Leanne's eyes. "You're so brave, braver than I've ever been." "You're brave too," Hallie said gently. "You're just scared right now." At that moment, Sadie's soft crying came from the bedroom. Leanne started to rise, but Jenna stopped her. "I'll get her," she said, heading to the bedroom. When Jenna was gone, Hallie looked seriously at her mother. "Sadie deserves more than a life on the run. She deserves a real home, a school, doctors, everything we never had." "I know," Leanne whispered. "I wish I could give that to all three of you." "And maybe you can," Hallie persisted. "If we face this together," Jenna returned, Sadie awake and curious in her arms. "Look who's up," she said, smiling, handing the baby to Leanne. Leanne held Sadie carefully, noting her round cheeks and bright eyes, so much like her own. "What do you suggest I do?" she finally asked. "Go see him," Jenna replied immediately. "Not his associate, but the father himself. Show him that his daughter exists," Hallie added, "that she's real, that she has a face, a name. It's much harder to ignore someone once you've actually seen them. Leanne pondered this, still stroking Sadie's thin hair. What if he won't see us? What if he calls security? Then at least we tried, Jenna said. And we can move on, knowing we did our best. We're not saying it'll be easy, Hallie added, but running forever isn't easy either. Leanne looked at her 3 daughters, Sadie in her arms, and the twins, smaller yet so wise, standing before her. For the first time in a long while, she felt something beyond fear, a spark of hope, of resolve igniting inside her. Maybe you're right, she said, a small smile forming. No more running. It's time to stand up. The girls smiled, relieved to have convinced her. When do we go? Jenna asked, always ready for action. Tomorrow, Leanne answered, her voice steadier now. First, we need to find out where he works. We can ask Clara, Hallie suggested. She knows the city well. We should prepare, Jenna added thoughtfully. Wear our best clothes, get cleaned up. And most importantly, Hallie said, looking down at the identical bracelets on all 4 wrists, we need to show him we're a family, that we stand together. And we're not leaving until we're heard. That night, while Clara made dinner, the 4 of them remained in the living room, devising a simple but determined plan. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew they would face it together. The girls led the way, showing Leanne that sometimes courage comes from the most unexpected places, and that as frightening as the road ahead might be, it was better to face it head-on than to spend life running. The morning dawned grey but without rain, the sort of day that felt like it was holding its breath. Clara helped the girls get ready, using the nicest clothes they owned, not many but clean and pressed. For Sadie, they improvised a tiny dress out of a soft shirt Clara had in storage. Are you sure about this? Leanne asked for the 3rd time while brushing her hair in the small bathroom mirror. Her hands were trembling slightly. Absolutely sure, Jenna replied, playing with Sadie on the bed. It's what we have to do. Clara entered the room carrying a cup of tea for Leanne. Drink this. It'll calm your nerves. Thank you, Clara, Leanne said, accepting the cup gratefully. For everything. I don't know what we would have done without you. The older woman smiled, her kind eyes shining. Fate brought you to me, and now fate is carrying you onward. After a light breakfast, no one could eat much because of nerves. It was time to leave. Clara had helped them learn where Derek worked, a large building in the city's financial district, headquarters of an important investment firm. He's an executive director there, Leanne explained to the twins as they walked to the bus stop. A very important man. And rich? Hallie asked bluntly. Yes, very rich, Leanne replied, adjusting Sadie in her arms. Then he has no excuse not to help, Jenna stated with childlike logic. The bus rumbled through the city, passing increasingly upscale neighborhoods. Leanne gazed out the window, her tension growing. The twins, on the other hand, stared at everything with curiosity. They had never been to this part of town. They got off on a wide avenue lined with gleaming buildings reflecting the overcast sky. People in suits hurried by, carrying briefcases and talking on phones. It's that one, Leanne said, pointing to a particularly imposing building with at least 30 floors. The 3 of them paused on the sidewalk, looking up. The tower seemed to stretch into the clouds. Let's go, Jenna said, taking her mother's hand. Hallie did the same on Leanne's other side, and together they passed through the revolving doors into the lobby. The space was impressive, marble floors, dark wood-paneled walls, and a large reception desk in the center. People passing by glanced curiously at the group. It wasn't common to see 2 kids and a young woman with a baby in such a corporate setting. Leanne took a deep breath and approached the reception desk. The well-groomed receptionist lifted her eyes from the computer. May I help you? She asked, polite but cool. I'd like to speak with Derek Lawson, Leanne said, trying to steady her voice. The receptionist gave her a once-over, then eyed the children. Mr. Lawson is in a meeting. Do you have an appointment? No, but it's urgent. Please tell him Leanne is here. The receptionist frowned. I'm sorry, but without an appointment I can't disturb Mr. Lawson. He's a very busy man. Please, Leanne insisted, It's a very important personal matter." The woman sighed, clearly annoyed by the persistence. "As I said, without a prior appointment, there's nothing I can do. If you want, you can call and try scheduling. Here's his office number." She slid a business card across the desk. Leanne picked up the card and looked at her daughters. Jenna shook her head. This wasn't going to be so simple. "We'll wait outside," Hallie whispered. "He has to come out at some point." Sadie started fussing, perhaps sensing the tension. Leanne rocked her gently. "All right," she agreed, turning to the receptionist. "Thank you for your time." The four of them left the building, suddenly unsure of what to do. It had been naive to think they could just walk in and confront Derek in his own territory. "Now what?" Leanne asked, looking defeated. "Now we wait," Jenna replied determinedly. "Like Hallie said, he has to leave at some point. But it could take hours," Leanne protested, glancing at Sadie, "and it's getting cold." "We'll take turns," Hallie suggested, always the practical one. "Jenna and I can stay out here a while, and you and Sadie can wait in that cafe on the corner. Then we'll switch." Leanne looked at her older daughters, once again amazed by their maturity and resolve. "You shouldn't have to go through this," she said, her voice choking up. "You shouldn't have to fight like this." "It's what families do," Jenna said simply. "They help each other." They began taking turns. Leanne and Sadie would spend some time in the cafe on the corner while the twins watched the building's entrance. Then the girls would rest in the cafe while Leanne stayed outside. The hours dragged on. The day wore on slowly. The sky remained grey, and there was no sign of Derek. People entered and exited the building, indifferent to the small family waiting patiently on the sidewalk. Around 3 in the afternoon, Leanne was outside with Sadie while the twins were in the cafe. The baby slept peacefully in her arms, unaware of the ongoing drama. Leanne was beginning to lose hope. What if Derek never came out? What if there was another exit? What if... Her thoughts were interrupted when she saw movement by the revolving doors. A group of men in suits emerged from the building, talking animatedly. Among them, Leanne immediately recognized Derek. He looked older than she remembered, with a touch of grey at his temples, but it was unmistakably him. Her first instinct was to run to the cafe and call the twins. But if she did, she might lose him. He could get into a car and drive off. Heart-pounding, Leanne rose from the bench where she had been sitting and positioned herself directly in the group's path. The men stopped talking when they saw her, surprised by the sudden interruption. "Derek," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. He stared at her, confused at first, then shocked as he recognized her. "Leanne." His gaze shifted from her to the baby in her arms, then back to her face. "What are you doing here?" The other men discreetly stepped aside, sensing a personal matter. They remained a short distance away but were clearly curious. "We need to talk," Leanne said. Derek glanced around, visibly uncomfortable. "Now isn't a good time. I'm with clients." "It hasn't been a good time for 8 months, Derek," Leanne countered, her voice firm but not hostile. "I waited here all day. I'm not leaving until we talk." He hesitated, then turned to the other men. "Give me a minute, please." They nodded and moved farther away, heading for the corner. Derek turned back to Leanne, his expression clouded with annoyance. "What do you want? I thought this was settled. James talked to you, offered you money." "James threatened me," Leanne corrected. "Said he'd ruin my life if I didn't disappear. That's not settling things, Derek." "It's intimidation." Derek looked genuinely surprised. "What are you talking about? He was only supposed to offer you fair compensation." Leanne shook her head, realizing Derek might really have been unaware of everything his associate had done. "It doesn't matter anymore. I'm not here to ask for money or cause a scene." She looked down at Sadie, who was starting to wake up. "I'm here because you need to know." Carefully, Leanne turned the baby so Derek could see her face. Sadie opened her drowsy eyes, blue, just like his. "This is Sadie," Leanne said. "Your daughter." Derek went pale. He stared at the baby as if seeing a ghost. He couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes, your daughter," Leanne repeated. "She was born almost 3 months ago." At that moment, Jenna and Hallie, who had seen everything from the cafe window, rushed out to join their mother. They stood by her side like small sentinels. Derek looked at the girls, perplexed. "Who are they?" "They're my daughters too," Leanne replied. "My older daughters, Jenna and Hallie." The twins studied him with mingled curiosity and distrust. It felt strange to see this polished stranger and know he was tied to Sadie. Derek appeared utterly lost. He looked from the baby to the twins and then to Leanne, as though trying to process it all. "Why are you telling me this now? What do you want?" "I don't want anything specific," Leanne answered honestly. "I just wanted you to know, to see her face, to understand she's real, not just a problem for your associate to handle." Sadie made a few small noises, stretching her tiny hands in the air. Without realizing it, Derek took a step forward for a closer look. Something about seeing his own flesh and blood, so small and vulnerable, seemed to mesmerize him. "She has your eyes," Hallie said suddenly. Derek looked at the girl, then back at Sadie, beginning to notice the resemblance. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," Leanne replied. "We just wanted you to know, to think about it, to remember there's a real person involved here, a little person who never asked to be born into all this." Derek ran his hand over his face, clearly shaken. "Where are you staying?" The question took Leanne by surprise. "With a friend, just temporarily." He nodded slowly, as if making up his mind about something. "Give me your number. I'll call so we can talk." "We need to handle this differently." Leanne hesitated. "I don't want any more threats, Derek, not from you or your associate." "There won't be any threats," he promised, his tone gentler now. "You're right. This involves a child. My child. We need to handle it properly." Leanne found a scrap of paper in her makeshift bag and wrote down Clara's number, the only one they had. "Call any time," she said, handing it to him. Derek took the paper, stealing another glance at Sadie. Something in his expression had changed, his initial irritation replaced by something more complex, perhaps confusion, or the beginnings of understanding. "I will call," he said, putting the paper in his pocket. "Tomorrow." The men at the corner were growing impatient. One glanced at his watch and signaled to Derek. "I have to go," he said, suddenly looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "We do too," Leanne replied. "Thank you for listening." Derek nodded, took one more look at Sadie, then at the twins, and walked back toward his clients. As he moved away, it was clear his posture had changed. His shoulders seemed heavier, carrying a new weight, or perhaps a new responsibility. Leanne and the girls remained there for a moment, watching him go. It wasn't the explosive confrontation they might have expected, but something significant had happened. A seed had been planted. "What now?" Jenna asked, grasping her mother's hand. "Now we wait," Leanne said, shifting Sadie in her arms. "Again." "Do you really think he'll call?" Hallie asked skeptically. Leanne gazed in the direction Derek had disappeared at the corner. "I think so." He saw her face. "It's different when you actually see." The four of them headed to the bus stop, tired but harboring a glimmer of hope. The sky was still gray, yet somehow less oppressive. As Leanne had said, it's different when you truly see someone or something. And today, for the first time, Derek had really seen his daughter, not as a problem but as a person, a small person with his own eyes. And that, Leanne thought, as they boarded the bus back to Clara's place, could make all the difference. 3 days passed after that meeting on the sidewalk. 3 days of anxious waiting, when every ring of the phone made Leanne's heart leap. Clara tried to keep everyone busy. The twins helped cook. Sadie had long baths in the kitchen sink, and laughter filled the small home. But the tension still lingered like an invisible cloud over them. On the afternoon of the 4th day, the phone finally rang. Clara answered, had a brief exchange, then handed the receiver to Leanne. "It's him," she whispered, stepping back to give Leanne some privacy. Leanne took a deep breath before speaking. "Hello?" "Leanne." Derek's voice sounded formal, controlled. "We need to talk. In person." "When?" "Today. 5 o'clock." He paused. "I'll send a car for you." Leanne hesitated, glancing at her daughters playing on the living room rug. "What about the girls?" "Just you?" Derek cut in. "It's better if we handle this alone." She didn't like his tone, but agreed anyway, knowing he couldn't see her reaction. All right. Derek gave her an address, a cafe on the outskirts of the city, and hung up without further comment. What did he say? Jenna asked, always alert. We're meeting today, Leanne replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Are we going too? Hallie asked. No, sweetie, just me. Seeing the worry in their expressions, she added, It'll be fine. It's just a talk. At exactly 5 o'clock, a shiny black car pulled up outside Clara's house. The driver, a man in a suit who avoided eye contact, opened the door for Leanne. She climbed in after giving her daughters a final hug and promising she'd be back soon. The ride was silent. Leanne watched the city flash by outside, trying to steady the anxiety rising in her chest. What would Derek say? What did he want? The cafe was discreet, nearly empty at that hour. Derek was already there, seated at a corner table. He wore a flawless dark suit, his hair neatly combed, more like he was attending a business meeting than a reunion with someone he'd once been close to. Thank you for coming, he said as Leanne sat down. Didn't really have much choice, did I? She retorted, harsher than she intended. Derek ignored the comment. He ordered coffee for both of them, without asking if she wanted any, and waited for the waiter to walk away before speaking. I've thought a lot since our encounter. Leanne waited, sensing he had more to say. The baby. Sadie. She really is my daughter. You think I'd make that up? Leanne felt her cheeks burn with anger. Derek raised a hand, signaling he meant no offense. I just needed to confirm. It's a complicated situation. Maybe for you, she shot back. For me and the girls, it's our lives. He took a sip of coffee as if buying time to organize his thoughts. You're right. And that's why I want to propose a solution. Leanne folded her arms protectively. What kind of solution? Derek opened a briefcase on the table and pulled out some papers. I bought a house, he said simply, sliding a photo toward her. For you and the girls. Leanne stared at the image, too stunned to speak. It was a simple but lovely 2-story house with a small front yard. I've also opened an account, he went on, showing another paper with banking details. There's enough money in it for you to live comfortably, especially for Sadie's needs. Leanne examined the papers, then looked up at Derek. Why? It's the right thing to do, he answered coolly, with no emotion in his voice. I'm responsible for Sadie. I want to make sure she doesn't lack anything. What about the twins? Them too, he said, hesitating just a moment. They're part of the package. A knot tightened in Leanne's throat. That was exactly how he saw them. A package of problems to solve, not real people with real feelings. There is, however, one condition, Derek said, his tone growing serious. One that's non-negotiable. Leanne had expected this. What is it? You will not contact me again, ever. He locked eyes with her, his gaze cold. And you won't expose this story to anyone. It's total silence. A chill coursed through Leanne. It felt as though she were being erased. You want us to pretend we don't exist? Derek drummed his fingers on the table, impatient. Don't be dramatic. I'm offering you a house, financial security, a better life than you have now. I just don't want complications. Complications, Leanne repeated, bitterness on her tongue. That's what we are to you. Look, he said, leaning in slightly, I'm trying to fix my mistake in the best way I can, but I have a position, a reputation, a wife, Leanne finished for him. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed, running a hand over his face, a rare show of weariness. It's your choice, Leanne. Accept my offer or continue as you are. He checked his expensive watch. But I don't have all day. I need an answer. Leanne closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her daughters, of tiny Sadie, of the twins who'd already endured so much. She thought of Clara's small but welcoming home, kind yet only a temporary refuge, and the uncertain future they faced if she refused. The truth was, she didn't have a choice. I accept, she finally said, opening her eyes. Not for you, but for my daughters. Derek looked relieved. He pulled out more papers from the briefcase. Good. Here are the documents for the house. It's already in your name, and the bank card. Leanne took the papers. feeling oddly as though she were selling her soul, yet it was also a chance to start over that she might never otherwise have. "When can we move in?" "Immediately, the house is ready." He signaled for the waiter to bring the check. The meeting was over, the deal done. "That's it?" Leanne asked, placing the paperwork into her bag. "That's it." He stood. "The driver will take you home now, and then to the new house whenever you're ready." He extended his hand in a businesslike manner. Leanne hesitated, but shook it. "Goodbye, Derek." "Goodbye, Leanne." Without looking back, he left the cafe, leaving her alone with the strange feeling that she had both gained and lost something at the same time. Outside, the black car was still waiting. Leanne climbed in, clutching the papers that promised a better future for her daughters, a house, financial security, a genuine chance to start over. It was more than she'd ever hoped for, and yet it left a bitter taste. The forced silence, the erasure of her existence in Derek's life. But as the car carried her back to Clara's, Leanne decided it didn't matter. She would do anything for her daughters. Now at least they would have a true home, together, safe and with a roof over their heads. Silence was a small price to pay for that. The move took place on a sunny autumn Saturday. Clara insisted on accompanying them to the new address, bringing a basket of homemade bread and jam as a housewarming gift. Derek's driver waited patiently while the five of them said their goodbyes, promising frequent visits. "Don't forget about old Clara," the older woman said, hugging each of them. "Never," Jenna promised, gripping the wrinkled hands that had offered them so much comfort. When the car finally parked, Leanne's heart raced. The house looked just like the photo. 2 stories, light-colored walls, wooden shutters. A small garden out front with a few flowers clinging to life, despite the autumn chill, enclosed by a low fence. "Is it really ours?" Hallie asked, eyes wide. "It's ours," Leanne confirmed, still holding Sadie in her arms. The twins scrambled out of the car, racing to the door, but stopped on the threshold as if they needed permission to enter. Leanne joined them, pulling a key from her pocket. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the door. A soft click, and the house opened to reveal their new life. Inside, it was simple but cozy. A few pieces of basic furniture, a couch, a small dining table with 4 chairs, and beds in the bedrooms. There was even a crib for Sadie, complete with a mobile of stars. The kitchen cupboards held new dishes and cookware, and the pantry was stocked with enough food for weeks. "Look, Jenna," Hallie called, opening a door. "There's a backyard." It was a small patch of grass with an old tree in the corner, perfect for playing in the sunshine. They spent hours exploring every corner of their new home. There were 3 bedrooms, one for Leanne, one for the twins, and a smaller one for Sadie. Each had a window letting in warm sunlight, leaving golden pools on the wooden floors. "Can I hang a drawing on the wall?" Jenna asked, pointing to the blank space above her bed. "Of course," Leanne replied, smiling. "This room is yours." The words sounded both strange and wonderful. Your room, your house, your home. That first evening, they ate dinner around the table, with Clara's bread and jam and a simple soup Leanne had made. It tasted like a feast, because they were together and safe in their own house. "Here's to our new life," Leanne said, raising her glass of water as though it were the finest champagne. The girls laughed, copying her gesture. Even Sadie, in a makeshift high chair, seemed to smile at the moment. Over the following days, the house began to take on their personality. The girls' drawings went up on the walls. Flowers from the yard appeared in vases. Leanne sewed curtains from fabric bought at the local market. Small touches turned a building into a home. For the first time in ages, they had a peaceful routine. Leanne rose early to make breakfast, and the twins set the table. Mornings were spent exploring the neighborhood or playing in the backyard. In the afternoons, while Sadie napped, Leanne taught the twins what she knew of reading and math, determined to give them the education they deserved. "I'll enroll you both in school next semester," she promised, proud to see Jenna already writing complete sentences. "A real school?" Hallie asked, eyes shining. "A real one," Leanne confirmed, "with other kids, real teachers, new books." "Can we talk about our house?" Jenna asked, always concerned with details. Leanne hesitated, recalling the silence clause with Derek. But that didn't mean the girls couldn't live normal lives. Of course you can. This is our house, our life. The money Derek deposited into the bank account was more than enough for their needs. For the first time, Leanne was able to buy new clothes, fresh produce, even a few books and toys. It wasn't luxury, but it was comfort and dignity. One pleasant afternoon, Leanne spread a blanket in the backyard and let Sadie crawl around. Now nearly 4 months old, Sadie could roll over on her own and reached for everything in sight. The twins sat next to her, showing her flowers and leaves, delighted by each new reaction from their baby sister. "She smiled at me," Hallie exclaimed, beaming. "That's because you're funny," Jenna teased, nudging her sister playfully. Leanne watched from the back door, feeling a near unreal sense of peace after so many months of fear and want. Sadie let out a bright laugh, such a pure sound that Leanne felt tears prick her eyes. This was exactly what she had always wanted to give her children, a place where they could laugh without worry and grow up safe. The tree's shadow danced on the blanket, making patterns for Sadie to observe. The twins invented stories of princesses and dragons, casting Sadie as the heroic lead. A soft breeze carried the scent of flowers from the neighbor's yard, mingling with the aroma of fresh bread baking somewhere close by. Leanne closed her eyes, letting it all sink in. The warmth of the sun, the laughter of her daughters, the solid reassurance of the house behind her. No more gnawing uncertainty, no more terror of tomorrow. There was only this moment, simple, yet filled with a joy so intense it nearly hurt. When she opened her eyes again, Leanne realized she was smiling, a genuine smile that began in her heart and lit up her face. It had been so long since she felt happiness without guilt, hope without fear. It wasn't a life of luxury, but it was a life of peace. And for someone who knew all too well the cost of desperation, peace was the greatest treasure of all. Meanwhile, Derek's car glided through the night, slicing silently along empty city streets. It was late, almost midnight, but he had no desire to go home. Lately, he'd been putting off that moment, staying at the office longer and longer under the pretense of urgent work. The truth was he couldn't sleep, and he didn't want to face the darkness of his bedroom, where thoughts attacked him mercilessly. It had been 2 weeks since he'd met with Leanne, 2 weeks since he'd signed over the house, opened the bank account, and believed he had taken care of the matter with cold, business-like efficiency. A problem solved, a page turned. That was how he managed every situation in his life, with detachment, practicality, and distance. But something felt different this time. He pulled into the garage of his mansion and entered through a side door, taking care not to make noise. He didn't want to wake his wife, didn't want the conversation, the explanations for why he was home so late yet again. He poured himself a whiskey in his study and loosened his tie, feeling the weight of the day on his shoulders. He glanced at a framed photo on his desk. He and his wife at a charity gala, perfect smiles, impeccable attire. It was a staged image of happiness, of success. Why did it suddenly seem so hollow? He sank into the leather chair and closed his eyes. But instead of comforting darkness, he saw Leanne's face from the day they met. She had been working in a cafe near his office, somewhere he didn't typically go because it was too ordinary, too unrefined, but he'd stopped in one rainy afternoon on a whim. Leanne had smiled when she served him, a genuine smile, nothing like the trained expressions at his social events. She had freckles on her nose and chatted about the weather with such natural ease that it surprised him. He returned the next day, and the day after that, and the next. Derek took a swig of whiskey, feeling it burn on the way down. He remembered how easy it had been to talk to her, to share things he never told anyone else. She made him laugh with simple anecdotes and astute observations about passers-by. How easy it had also been to lie, to admit that he was married, to fabricate a simpler version of his life, to craft a persona that allowed him to be with her, free of consequences. When had he become this man? The kind of man who lied without remorse, who discarded people like defective parts on a conveyor belt. Sadie's tiny face filled his mind, those bright eyes, so much like his own, her small hands reaching out at nothing in particular, an innocent baby carrying his blood, his daughter. The words still felt foreign, uncomfortable. He had a daughter, a child he didn't know, who wouldn't come to him when she learned to walk, who wouldn't even know he was her father. And the twins, those quiet girls who watched him with wary eyes. They weren't his daughters, but they were Sadie's sisters, part of the package, as he'd called them so coldly, a mere inconvenience in a business transaction. Derek got up, agitated, pacing the office. The silence of his grand home weighed on him. Here he was, surrounded by wealth and luxury, and he had never felt emptier. He grabbed his phone and looked at his photo gallery. There was the picture of the house he had purchased for Leanne and the children. A simple, comfortable place, nowhere near the opulence of his own home. He had deemed it adequate for them, sufficient. But was it? Was it fair that his daughter grew up in that smaller house while he lived amid opulence? Was it fair that Sadie never knew who her father was, that she might grow up believing she wasn't worth acknowledging? What kind of man did that to his own child? His phone vibrated in his hand, startling him. A late email notification. More work, more numbers, more money. Money that had always seemed so crucial, so defining of who he was. Derek threw the phone onto the desk in irritation. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of himself. Not just for what he had done. Lies, betrayals, manipulations were all part of the game he played, but for who he had become. A man without a heart. A man who believed everything could be solved with money. A man who viewed his own daughter as a problem to be managed. When had it happened? When had he lost the capacity for compassion, for caring about someone who had nothing to offer him? He returned to the leather chair, staring at the amber whiskey swirling in his glass. He recalled how coldly he had treated Leanne at the cafe, the hurt in her eyes when he'd laid out his conditions, his dismissive reference to the girls. And now they were there in that house he had bought, rebuilding their lives without him. Leanne probably spoke of a father who was absent, a man who didn't care, and every day he did nothing, he proved she was right. Money wasn't enough. It never would be. Money wouldn't erase the look on Leanne's face when she showed him Sadie. It wouldn't drown out the baby's faint cries or the twins' watchful eyes. Derek set the glass on the table and covered his face with his hands. What would his associate, James, say if he knew what he was thinking? He would advise caution, warn about scandal, about the company's image, about Derek's marriage. But for the first time in a long time, Derek realized he didn't care what others thought. He didn't care about the consequences for his public image. He only cared about the man he saw in the mirror every morning, a hollow man, alone, refusing to shoulder the responsibilities of his actions, a man he no longer wanted to be. Suddenly his decision was clear, immediate and inescapable, as though it had been waiting for him all along. The agreement with Leanne, the money, the house, none of it had really solved anything. It was all a way to hide from the truth, but the truth could no longer be denied. Sadie was his daughter, and he wanted to be in her life. Not just as a distant benefactor who sent money, but as a father, a human being who cared, who would be there to see her grow, who would try to do better. He stood, a new sense of purpose surging within him. It wouldn't be easy. He'd have to face Leanne, who would likely be angry about his sudden change of heart. He'd have to forge a relationship with the twins, who clearly didn't trust him. He'd have to handle the fallout in his own life, his marriage, his public persona. But something told him it would be worth it, that maybe this was the only thing that truly mattered. He grabbed his car keys again. It was late, too late for a visit, but he couldn't wait until morning. The silence in his own conscience had echoed for too long. It was time to become the man he should have been, the man he might have once wanted to be, before power and money turned him into a shadow of himself. He stepped out into the cold night air, feeling strangely lighter. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would knock on the door of that simple house and offer something more precious than money. Himself, with all his faults and regrets. He would offer a chance to start over, not just for Leanne and the girls, but for himself. The sun was beginning to set when a soft knock sounded at the front door. Leanne was in the kitchen preparing dinner, while the twins played in the backyard with Sadie, who was now sitting up on her own with the support of cushions. "Who could that be?" she murmured, drying her hands on her apron. She wasn't expecting visitors, Clara had visited over the weekend and the neighbors were still basically strangers. When she opened the door, her heart nearly stopped. Derek stood there on the threshold, not in his usual suit, but in dark trousers and a simple shirt with rolled-up sleeves. In his hands, he held a small package wrapped in bright paper. "Derek?" The surprise was evident in her voice. "What are you doing here?" He looked different, more than just the casual clothes. There was something in his eyes, a vulnerability she had never seen. "I had to see you," he said, "all of you." Leanne paused, glancing behind her into the house. The girls were still in the backyard, unaware of his arrival. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said quietly. "We have an agreement." "I know." Derek lowered his gaze before meeting hers again. "And it was a mistake, just one of many I've made." Something in the honesty of his tone made Leanne hesitate. She glanced back toward the yard again, then at him. "We can talk outside," she finally suggested, pointing to a small bench in the front garden away from the children's ears. Derek nodded, relieved. He followed her to the bench and sat down, leaving a respectful space between them. The little package was still clutched in his hands. "Is the house all right?" he asked hesitantly. "Are you comfortable here?" "Yes," Leanne replied. "More than we've ever had. The girls are happy." A heavy silence fell between them. The sounds of the street felt distant, kids playing a few blocks away, a dog barking somewhere and the breeze rustling the leaves. "I didn't come to disturb your peace," Derek said at last. "I just realized I can't keep going on like we were." Leanne watched him warily but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "When we met on the sidewalk and I saw Sadie for the first time," he paused as if choosing his words carefully, "I thought I could fix everything with money, a house, a bank account, and problem solved." "Is that how you usually fix things?" Derek nodded, wearing a sad smile. "It's how I was taught to live. Evaluate a problem, calculate a solution, implement a decision. No emotion, no guilt, no doubt." He looked down at the package in his hands. "But I haven't been able to sleep since then. I can't stop thinking about Sadie, the twins, about you." Leanne felt something twist in her chest. She didn't want his words to affect her, didn't want to feel anything but the righteous anger she'd held on to. Yet the raw sincerity in his voice was hard to ignore. "What do you want, Derek?" she asked quietly. "I want to know my daughter," he answered, equally direct. "Not as some stranger sending money, but as a father. Or at least try to be one." He offered her the package. "This is for Sadie. Nothing expensive or extravagant. I just saw it and thought of her." Leanne took the gift hesitantly and unwrapped it slowly, revealing a small, soft teddy bear. "I'm not even sure if she plays with stuffed animals yet," Derek admitted, looking embarrassed. "She's starting to reach for things," Leanne replied gently. "She'll like how soft it feels." Silence again, but it was less tense this time. "What's she like?" Derek asked suddenly. "What does she enjoy? What's her personality like?" His questions caught Leanne off guard. It was the first time he'd shown genuine interest in Sadie as a person, not as a problem. "She's curious. She watches everything intently. And she has a smile that lights up her whole face when she's happy." A small grin tugged at Leanne's lips as she pictured her daughter. "She doesn't cry much, but when she wants something, she's persistent, stubborn." "Like her mother," Derek said, a note of fondness in his voice. Leanne looked at him, surprised by his remark. "Why now, Derek?" she asked. "Why come here after you already fixed everything with your money?" He inhaled deeply, gazing at the darkening sky. "Because I realized what I've turned into, a man who thinks everything has a price, that any problem can be erased by writing a check." He met her gaze. "A man who stopped feeling—" Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "When I met you in that cafe, Leanne, it was the first time in years I felt real. I wasn't the executive and the director, the success story. I was just a man, talking to a woman who made him laugh, who had life in her eyes." Leanne felt her throat tighten at the memory of those days. Things had been so simple, so genuine. "I loved you," Derek continued, his words coming slowly. "Truly." But when James found out, when he learned you might be pregnant, he bombarded me with talk of scandal, the company, my position. He said he'd handle it. And you let him, Leanne said, the hurt still present in her tone. I did. His admission hung in the air. I was at the height of my career, about to close the biggest deal of my life. I chose to protect my image, my future, and not the woman who trusted me. Derek glanced at the modest house behind them, and then at the backyard, where the girls' voices echoed softly. I'm tired of being lonely, Leanne. The life I built has everything, except genuine people. I loved you. And I lost you because I was a coward. His confession hovered between them, fragile and precious. Leanne didn't know how to respond. Part of her longed to believe him, to forgive him, but another part remembered the pain, the fear, the abandonment. I'm not asking you to come back to me, Derek clarified quickly. I know it's too late for that. I just want the chance to know Sadie, to be part of her life, if only in some small way, to be better than I've been. From the backyard came Sadie's giggle, that pure, crystal sound capable of melting any heart. She deserves to know who her father is, Leanne said at last. All of them deserve more than lies and secrets. We've had enough of those. Derek nodded, a flicker of hope lighting his eyes. Could I see her, just for a moment? I won't interfere or bother anyone. Leanne considered his request. She looked at the man in front of her, so different from the cold executive who had dismissed her weeks ago. She saw sincerity in his eyes, genuine regret. Come on, she said, standing up. Let's go around back. As they walked alongside the house, they didn't speak of forgiveness or the future. They spoke as parents, about Sadie, about her growth, about the things she'd need in the coming years. It was a beginning, small, tentative, uncertain, but something. A door that hadn't slammed shut, a past wound that might hurt less now that it was being faced honestly. And maybe, Leanne thought as she led Derek to the backyard where her daughters played, that would be enough for now. 3 days had passed since Derek's visit. 3 days in which Leanne watched as Sadie gleefully dragged around and gnawed on the new teddy bear. 3 days in which the twins cautiously asked about the man who came to visit and what he wanted. On the morning of the 4th day, the phone rang. Leanne picked up, and Derek's hesitant but determined voice came through the line. Leanne, good morning. Good morning, Derek. A brief silence, as though he were summoning his courage. I've been thinking a lot since we talked, he began softly. About Sadie, the twins, everything. Leanne sat at the kitchen table, watching through the window as the twins played in the yard with Sadie. I want to be in her life, Leanne. Really be in it, Derek said, his voice gaining strength. I don't want to be just a monthly check. I want to show up, learn who she is, see her grow. Leanne closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. I know it's complicated, he continued. I know I haven't earned your trust, but I'm ready to try, to earn it, little by little. It's not that simple, Derek, she said at last. It's not just Sadie. We're a family now, me and all 3 girls. Whatever affects one of us affects us all. I understand that, Derek said. I'm prepared to get to know the twins as well, to respect your space, to learn. He paused. I'm willing to follow your rules, Leanne. I just want a chance. Leanne looked out at the yard again. Jenna was gently pushing Sadie on a makeshift swing, while Hallie was gathering flowers to make a little crown. I need to talk to the twins first. They have a say in this, too. Of course, Derek agreed immediately. That makes perfect sense. I'll call you back, Leanne promised. I'll be waiting. That afternoon, once Sadie was napping, Leanne gathered the twins in the living room. It was time for an important conversation, one that could change their lives. The man who visited, Derek, is Sadie's father, Leanne said, getting straight to the point. He wants to be in her life. Come over, get to know her better. Jenna frowned, immediately distrustful. But he didn't want her before. Why does he want her now? He says he's changed, that he realizes he made a mistake. Do you believe him? Hallie asked, her curious eyes on her mother. Leanne sighed. I don't know, but I believe everyone deserves a second chance. And I believe Sadie deserves to know her father if he genuinely wants to be there. The twins exchanged a meaningful look, one of those silent twin conversations only they understood. "What if he hurts Sadie?" Jenna asked, voicing the fear they all felt. "Or hurts us?" "We won't let that happen," Leanne promised. "If he comes you, it'll be with clear conditions, and we'll be watching the whole time." "Is he going to live here?" Hallie pressed. "No, of course not. He'd just come visit sometimes." Another silent glance passed between the twins. "I guess we can try," Hallie said finally, surprising Leanne with her willingness. "If he really changed. But we have to protect Sadie," Jenna added, ever the guardian. "If he does anything bad, or if she doesn't like him, he's gone." Leanne nodded, proud of their maturity. "I completely agree. We'll give him a chance, on our terms. If it doesn't work out, we end it." That evening, Leanne called Derek back. She laid out the conditions, supervised visits, respecting everyone's space and timing, no empty promises. "When can I come by?" he asked, a tremor of eagerness in his voice. "Sunday," Leanne answered, "for lunch." Sunday dawned bright and sunny, as though the sky itself wanted to make the day special. The girls woke early, a mix of nerves and excitement making them more energetic than usual. Leanne prepared a simple but carefully made lunch: roast chicken, potatoes, a colorful salad. At 11 on the dot, the doorbell rang. Derek arrived right on time, dressed casually, minus the stiff corporate demeanor that normally clung to him. He carried a small bag in his arms. "I brought a few things for the girls," he explained almost shyly. "Nothing fancy, just little gifts." Leanne nodded and led him to the living room, where the twins waited, tense and curious. Sadie lay on a blanket, absorbed in colorful blocks. "Hello," Derek said, clearly uncomfortable under the children's intense scrutiny. I brought some things for you." From the bag, he pulled out carefully wrapped items. For Sadie, a soft fabric book with different textures. For the twins, simple board games and art supplies. "I heard you like drawing," he said to Hallie, offering her a notebook and colored pencils. Her eyes went wide. "How did he know?" "And you," he said, looking at Jenna. "Take care of your sisters like a real guardian." Jenna didn't answer, but there was a flicker of acknowledgement in her gaze. Leanne had never told Derek such details about the girls. He had figured it out himself in their brief time together. Slowly, the ice began to melt. Sadie, too young for fear or reservations, was the first to approach. She crawled toward Derek and held out a wooden block, an unspoken invitation to play. He accepted it, lowering himself awkwardly to the floor. With careful, slightly clumsy movements, he stacked the blocks, delighting Sadie as she clapped for each new level of the tower. Hallie was next, cautiously showing him some of her drawings. He praised them sincerely, asking questions about the colors and the stories behind each picture. Soon they were chatting about what she might want to draw in her new notebook. Jenna held back the longest, observing from a distance like a sentry. But eventually, she inched closer when Derek asked if she could help set the table for lunch. "You know how to set a table?" she asked suspiciously. "Honestly, not very well," he admitted, surprising her with his candor. "I've always had someone else do it for me. Maybe you can teach me." That admission of ignorance, that request for help, softened Jenna a bit. She directed him around the kitchen, showing him where to find plates, silverware, and napkins. Lunch went surprisingly well. They stuck to simple topics: the garden that was taking shape, neighbors the girls had met, plans for school the following semester. At one point, Derek noticed Sadie enthralled by a leaf that had blown into the house. She turned it over and over in her tiny hands, enthralled by the veins, texture, and color. "It's amazing, isn't it?" he commented, watching her. "How the simplest things can be so fascinating when you look through the right eyes." Leanne glanced at him, taken aback by the observation. There was something changed about this man, an ability to see beauty in the ordinary, to appreciate the present moment. By late afternoon, when it was time for him to leave, Derek thanked them for the day. He didn't make grand promises or speak of the future. He merely asked if he could come back. "Next Sunday," he suggested, a hint of hope in his voice. Leanne looked at the girls. Jenna shrugged, which for her was practically a yes. Hallie nodded, less shy than before. "And Sadie, of course, was blissfully unaware of adult complexities, happy in her own world of discoveries. Next Sunday, Leanne agreed. And so, a new routine began. Derek started appearing every Sunday, always punctual, always with small, thoughtful gifts. Over time, the visits expanded, some Saturday afternoons, an occasional Wednesday to help with the garden. He never stayed overnight or overstepped. He respected Leanne's boundaries, never forcing an intimacy that no longer existed between them. Instead, he focused on the girls, especially Sadie, learning how to be a father step by cautious step. One especially warm afternoon, Derek helped Jenna set up a small flower bed so Sadie could watch them plant seeds, learning about nature. As they dug in the dirt and prepared the soil, he talked about his own childhood. "My father was never around," he said, hands dirty from the soil. "Always working, always too busy. When he did show up, he gave me expensive gifts, but never any time." Jenna listened with newfound curiosity, seeing the man who was once just Sadie's father in a different light. "I promised myself I'd be different," he went on, "but I turned out just like him." Until now, Leanne, watering nearby plants, overheard the conversation in silence. Her heart, still closed off to Derek as a romantic partner, was starting to open to him as a father. She saw his genuine effort, his sincere attempts to right his wrongs. Months rolled by. The seasons shifted. Sadie took her first steps under the delighted gaze of everyone. The twins began attending the local school, making friends and bringing back stories each day. Leanne found a part-time job at a nearby library, working while the girls were in class. And Derek gradually became a steady presence, a reliable figure in the new life they were building. When Sadie turned 2, they threw a small party in the backyard. Clara came, bearing a handmade rag doll. A few neighbors were invited, and the yard filled with children's laughter and games. Leanne watched from the porch, a glass of lemonade in her hand, when Derek joined her. "You've done a wonderful job with them," he said, sitting in the chair beside her. "They're amazing kids." "We've done it," Leanne corrected him. "These past months, you've been part of it too." Derek smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. He was no longer the cold, calculating executive, but a man who had found something more meaningful than money or power, a sense of belonging. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the children were in bed, Hallie came into the living room carrying a small wooden box. "I got this at the neighborhood fair," she said. "I thought maybe we could keep our bracelets here." The box was simple yet lovely, carved with little floral details. Leanne called Jenna, and together the three of them took off their bracelets, the symbols that had once connected them against all odds. With careful hands, Leanne placed them inside the box, side by side. "They're no longer symbols of separation," she said softly. "Now they're reminders of everything we've overcome, of what we've rebuilt." The girls nodded, understanding the significance of the gesture. It wasn't about erasing the past, but transforming it into a source of strength rather than pain. A few weeks later, on a lazy afternoon, the house echoed with sounds of life, laughter drifting in from the backyard, the smell of something cooking on the stove, Sadie calling out to Hallie with her toddler voice, her hands smeared from playing in the garden. Leanne watched from the porch, seated beside Derek, who sipped a cup of tea with a soft smile on his face, as if still in disbelief at his own good fortune. The girls played together in the yard, as though it had always been this way. There was no longer that constant fear in Jenna's eyes nor the guarded quiet in Leanne's heart. And Derek, learning day by day to be the father he'd never had, listened more than he spoke, observed more than he acted, and learned more than he taught. The family they formed wasn't perfect. They had scars, tough days, and memories that still hurt, but it was real, built not on illusions or expectations, but on hard truths faced with courage. Together, they had found a fresh start, and finally they belonged to each other, not merely by blood, but by choice. The choice to stay, to try, to forgive, to rebuild. And in the end, that might be the only definition of family that truly matters. They gathered that evening, Leanne, Jenna, Hallie, Sadie, and Derek, under the gentle glow of the living room lamp. No words were needed. The air was warm with unspoken gratitude and acceptance. Their intertwined hands, their shared smiles, and their hopeful gazes said it all. They had come from different paths, carrying separate stories, doubts, and fears. Yet destiny had led them here, to discover in one another a bond stronger than anything that might have kept them apart. A bond forged by 3 identical bracelets, a small baby rescued in an alley, and the love of 2 sisters who refused to give up. A family, at last.